Hello, my name is James and this is the 92 podcast. I'm on a quest to speak to one fan from each of the 92 football teams that make up the Premier League, the Championship, League One and League Two. Each episode I'll shine the spotlight on a different club, talking to their fans, playing silly games and quizzes and learning what it's like to be a supporter of their team. In this episode, we talk about a team who currently hold the unwanted record for the most relegations from the Premier League. It's Norwich.
Norwich is just different because it just has a hold over so many people. There's no other, you've got no choice. You go to Norwich or go watch Cambridge or King's Lynn, really, I think. We did have a bid at once for Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah.
We made an 8 million bid for Celtic. That would have been nice. We're never going to go out and we're never going to spend 10 million on a player. It's just not going to happen, even with the Premier League.
Now, I don't know a lot about Norwich besides having Pukey in my fantasy team last season, which is why I've enlisted the help of Rob. He's a Norwich fan. Welcome to the 92 podcast. Hello, Rob.
Hello, thanks very much. You've stitched me up a bit with that relegation record. I didn't realise that one was going to get shared. It's not one of my favourite ones.
Yeah, it's probably not the one that you would want to be highlighted, is it? So how long have you been a fan of Norwich then, Rob?
I was probably 6 years old. So 20 odd years I've been a Norwich fan. I first got a season ticket when I was 6. Strangely, my dad, he was actually a Sunderland fan but was living in Norfolk, and they did season tickets, kids for £1 a game, believe it or not. So, yeah, it was £1 a match for me when I grew up. That, to be honest with you, is one of the success stories of the club, really, because at that time, the crowd was probably, 15,000 a match in a 27,000 stadium. That bit of work that they did to encourage the youth of that time to start going for £1. Now you can't get a season ticket at the club.
It's crazy, isn't it? You mentioned there that obviously they got you interested in football at a very young age by doing that kind of deal. How important do you think it is for other clubs to do that nowadays?
Yeah, I think it's the problem is it's short-sighted finance where the guy at the time, Neil Doncaster, who brought that in and was working for the club at the time, he's obviously long left the club now. He wasn't around to see it actually, the fruit be, picked, if you like, from that decision. I think it was just one of those ones where it also coincided with a moderate of success. So at the time we weren't doing very well in the Championship, and then they did that deal. We then got to a playoff final and then won the league the year after that to get promoted from the Championship to the Premier League. So I think it was like a two-pronged thing. And ever since then, I've had tickets and my family have had season tickets ever since. So you're talking 20 odd years, so financially it's a no-brainer really in the long term.
What are games like at Carrow Road then?
Yeah, Carrow Road, it's the same as a lot of grounds really. I think, most fans, if they're honest, would probably say sometimes that they find their own fans frustrating.
Yeah.
Norwich is a team where I can remember some games. I don't know if you watched the game where we beat Manchester City.
Yeah.
Last time in the Premier League, the atmosphere in that game, and there's been other games even in League One that I would say so. But I think also when things are against us, like many fans, they can potentially turn and start to struggle with the way that the managers play. One example for me is when Daniel Farke first came in 3 years ago, the style of football changed. So the passing out from the back and the rule change around having a goalkeeper pass a ball to a defender in the 6-yard box. You can almost audibly hear the intake of breath from everyone as we're passing it back across the back line. It's just something that the fans took, I would say, 6 to 8 months to get used to, especially when mistakes were made. The shout of get it forward. But that was the thing that I think now we've totally bought on. And when I go to other games, I still hear that shout of get it forward. And I think it's probably because of the success that the team's had.
So you mentioned that you've been to other stadiums other than Carrow Road. Are there any other stadiums that you've visited that you particularly like?
Yeah, I've got some obvious ones that I've been to. As you know, I went to the University of Sunderland, so I've got a soft spot for Sunderland as well. A lot of my family supports Sunderland, and they are a perfect example of the type of set of fans that, when things were going well and also when times are tough but they have a good run of form. The crowd, the stadium's full, but at the same time, I can remember being at games where Sunderland have been 3-0 down and everyone just goes home at half time.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where there's Sunderland, there's a weird one is Rotherham. I've been to there. It's a really quite a nice new stadium, but also, I mean, the fans, you can't hear anyone that doesn't have the accent, which is, I think, an interesting one. Everyone who's there has the local accent, whereas I felt like when I've gone to your Manchester Uniteds, that kind of stadium, your Arsenals, it's more of a franchise club. It's globalism. Yeah. It's completely different. Whereas your likes of your Rotherhams and teams like that where I've been, it's like you just, as I say, everyone seems to be from the area and has the accent. Dare I say, even the Grimsbys where I've been back in the day. So yeah, I think that's more the thing for me. I've been to a lot of different grounds, but I think the ones that I prefer are the ones where you can tell it's really the local people.
How does Norwich compare in that respect then? Are most of their fans from the local area?
Yeah, I would say so, but I think the difference with Norwich is we've got such a massive catchment area. Yeah. So we've got the whole of a county, really, the whole of Norfolk. I mean, Kings Lynn are now playing in the National League, so that's nice to have them back playing at a decent level. But for a long time, even they went into the very low leagues of football, and I think, I mean, the only other team that we've got nearest is Ipswich, which obviously can't attract like we can. No. But very formidable club back in the day. But you're talking an hour and a bit drive, and it's in Suffolk. And also, very interesting, their pricing model is, I mean, it's no less expensive to go to an Ipswich game, and it never has been. Even when we've been in the Premier League and now they're in League One, they're not cheap. It's one of those things where Norwich is just different because it just has a hold over so many people. There's no other, you've got no choice. You can go to Norwich or go watch Cambridge or Kings Lynn, really, I think. And both those clubs, it's nice to see both those clubs starting to get back to where they were 10 years ago.
So you mentioned Ipswich there. In terms of rivalries, obviously there is the East Anglian derby, which is Norwich and Ipswich. But Are there any other teams that you particularly like or dislike playing against?
I think the East Anglian derby, gets a lot of stick from people in terms of, I mean, it's called the Old Farm derby on BBC, which always winds me up a bit. And I think it's one of those ones where I'd say it's different to your Sunderland, Newcastle. A Norwich fan may never come into contact with an Ipswich fan. The only time they might come in contact is for the derby because it's such a distance. Yeah. And I would say it's unique in that, whereas most other derbies, people work with people have friends or extended family. Even Everton, Liverpool, it's practically family splits. Yeah. Whereas Norwich, Ipswich, it's like, it's a big distance. You only come in contact once a year. And I've been to games where it has been extremely heated, even with the fans and that after the game. But I think in terms of other teams, I mean, that's always been just because of, I think, competitiveness at the time. So everyone will say Leeds, but that was just because of the League One season and we were both competing for that league title that year. And I think, so that they're an example. I mean, other teams really, it's just sort of more bogey sides. I think Middlesbrough, but that was just because of the playoff final, really. Yeah, it's difficult on that one. I think it depends whoever is that team at the time that we're competing with in the league. So I'm sure one will come out this year. It was, again, the year that we went up and won the league. It was Leeds again, because Leeds were up against us. And also you've got likes of Brentford potentially this year, but it's too soon to say, really, I think.
So let's move on to the dreaded relegation talk now. Norwich, as we mentioned, hold the record now for the most relegations from the Premier League. So naturally, you'll have a lot of experience of the feelings associated with that. Exactly how does it feel to see your club get relegated?
It's the worst feeling. It's just, I think, as you're saying, I felt it so many times now. Apart from one that I can specifically remember, all the others, I've had time to deal with it. Yeah. In terms of understanding, it's coming. This Premier League one was especially so, and I think with COVID and other stuff that we'll potentially get into later around what happened with us and the injuries, and it was one of those things where we went up, we made a decision, and if we were going to stay up, everything needed to go for us, and everything went against us that could have gone against us, and I think that was a shame. It's one of those things where, and the same with this one, you build yourself up, you think you'll be okay, but it doesn't really hit you till it's the day, and it's just that disappointment, and that, I think the thing for all Norwich fans is, with the negative of the Championship, a lot of people say to us, well, the Championship's a very difficult league to get out of.
Yeah.
And for us, it's kind of, well, is it? Because we always manage. We work in 3-year cycles. It seems to be, we go up, we maybe last a year, maximum 2. We come down, or we could come down straight away. We then have one. This year normally is our sort of struggle year, where we sort of finish lower mid-table or mid-table, and then we have a big change. We change the management, and then we win the league. That sort of tends to be our sort of, in the past sort of 10 years, kind of the way it goes. But I think, you know, this year is unique in that I can't think of us ever being such an odds-on team.
Yeah.
In all other years where we've won the league or we've got promoted through the playoffs, I mean, the playoffs was kind of expected in terms of that, but I've never seen teams come and play against us how they are this year. I mean, I know Birmingham drew 0-0 last night, and I didn't watch the game because I wasn't surprised, because the way that they came to play us was just, honestly, I've never seen anything like it. They didn't just park a bus, they parked a lorry. It was just everyone in the back line 30 yards from goal. And I think that's completely different to, I mean, last year all of our games were like 3-2, 4-3. You know, there was games where we came back from 3-0 down to draw 3-3. Whereas I think this year it's going to be a lot of 1-0s, you know, 0-0s. Teams just know how we're going to play. They're going to let us have the ball. And I think it's going to be a breaking down season.
From relegations to promotions, obviously that record for the most relegations also implies that you've had a few promotions too, as you've just touched upon there.
Yeah.
How does that feeling compare to relegation?
I mean, yeah, that's definitely something I'll never get bored of. I think it's what I love about the Championship, and I don't go as far as other people that say daft things like, "Oh, you know, I'm happy being in the Championship." I'm not happy being in the Championship. You know, I want Norwich to be in the Premier League financially, to be a stable club. I mean, we don't have a lot of money. We need to be in the Premier League as much as we can be, to then have all of the other unbelievable stuff like the academy that we have. I mean, it's not so much just the promotions. I think it's like today, whatever game, whatever team we're playing, we've had some the odd bad time in the Championship, but I can honestly say from my entire lifetime, it's been very rare that we've got into a game and I've thought, I'm not looking forward to this game. This is going to be a game that we can compete in. Whereas I would say in the Premier League, there's been some games where I know what our team is. I know, you know, especially last year with our injury issues, we haven't actually got a chance. Realistically, we're not going to keep a clean sheet. We're not going to be able to contain the likes of players that we're coming up against, and we're not actually probably going to score. So it was just a case of waiting for that first goal for the other team, and then after that first goal, we come out and the floodgates open. I think whereas in the Championship, I mean, it's not just the joy of the actual promotion and you know, the trophies and that kind of thing. It's more the going to every game, knowing that we are going to compete, and the chances are we're going to at least score some goals.
So let's delve a little bit more into some of your personal memories. Who are some of your favourite players that you've seen don a Norwich City shirt?
First one, every time, I mean, because I'm going back to when I was young, really, here, Darren Huckabee. He was the first player, I mean, we signed actually on loan from Manchester City at the time, and he was the first player that was one of those ones where he would get the ball, and because of his style and his direct running, the whole crowd would sort of almost, the atmosphere would change every time he got the ball. And also it was because at the time when he first came, we didn't have the best team. A lot of people would accuse of us being at that time a little bit one-man team. That did change over time, and we signed some other players, believe it or not, players like Peter Crouch. We had Peter Crouch at that time.
Yeah.
We got him on loan as well. Another player that I liked was called Youssef Safri. He was a Moroccan centre midfielder who scored the best goal. Google it, Youssef Safri goal versus Newcastle. That's the best goal I've ever seen live. It must have been 40 yards. And he just hits it from a standing position pretty much. I think a lot of my favourite players, I'm doing some very, you know, good Norwich players, the likes of Grant Holt, a bit of a disservice, just because I was older. So I think I've grown up a bit, and you don't seem to idolise players. There's another player that I remember as well called Steen Nedergaard. I believe he was Danish. He was a right back, and I think he was the first goal that I can remember I think I was about 6 or 7 at the time, and he was a right back, and he scored a very long range goal that I can still remember to this day. So I think, yeah, probably top 3 of Darren Huckabee. I'm probably missing Ewan Roberts as well. He scored a lot of goals for Norwich. He was coming towards the end of his career. So I'd say Darren Huckabee, Youssef Safri, and Ewan Roberts is my top 3. But notable mentions for Grant Holt and Wes Hoolahan, probably.
Yes. So are there any other players that are playing for other teams, obviously other than the obvious ones like Messi's and your Ronaldo's and your Neymar's, that you'd like to see play at Carrow Road?
There was a couple of players, I was on Twitter last night, there was like unfortunate out of context things that have happened to us over the years. We did have a bid at once for Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah.
We made an 8 million bid for Celtic. I mean, that would have been nice. I think, was it Koulibaly as well at one point? It was a time where we were looking at centre-backs, and we were looking at all these different centre-backs, and I don't know who we ended up signing at the time instead of, I think it might have been Tim Closer, or someone like of that ilk at the time. It's just realistic. I'm too much of a realistic to dream too much. I mean, my favourite ever signing at the time was Ricky Van Wolfswinkel. We know how that worked out. I mean, I remember being hyped about that. That was he was linked with Liverpool. We got him on a January deal. Bizarrely, we bought him in January, but we didn't get him till the summer, and that just did not work. I mean, he had injuries and all sorts of problems. But I mean, even if you look at his career since then, bless him, he's had a fractured skull and all sorts. It's just not worked out for him. He scored a fantastic header on his debut, but just physically, I don't think that helped him. But I'll go with historically. I was very excited about Virgil van Dijk at the time, but it didn't happen.
That would have definitely been an interesting one. We'll come on to transfer activity in a little while, but are there any other players that you didn't enjoy seeing play and you just wanted them to get out of the club as quickly as possible?
Yeah, my dad often says this about me, and apparently I've got a cult hate figure who seems to always receive the brunt of criticism. I mean, I don't mean this against them personally at all. There was just players that at the time I just found frustrating. I mean, one of them was, we had a guy called Matty Patterson who's from the North East actually, and I always struggled with him. Andy Hughes as well. It tends to be midfielders that I don't really get, are they attacking or defensive?
Yeah.
So like, I don't mind a proper defensive midfielder. I don't mind an attacking midfielder that gives the ball away sometimes. Wes Hoolahan was one of them who was a bit of a luxury player. I mean, he was called the Norfolk Messi. And he used to just, kind of float around where he liked on the pitch, but had that ability to not necessarily assist, but the pass before the assist.
Yeah.
And I was obviously a fan of him. But I think, it's that midfielder that sort of, and one of the players that we will come on to who, I was quite critical of, who I didn't understand, was we had a player called Lucas Rupp, who's playing for us at centre mid at the moment, and I didn't really get. I think the difference that I would say now, and I had Mario Vrancic was another one, believe it or not, 2-3 years ago when we first signed him, who again, I think a lot of it with these players, it was the cultural difference and the change from the leagues that they were playing in to the Championship, which you don't get time. You're not going to be, the teams that you're playing against aren't going to let you have the ball, and it's the same in the Premier League. It's very fast paced. I think what I will say is I've learned with Daniel Farker and Stuart Webber in the current setup that actually I don't know what I'm talking about. They do, and over time that they've all proved me wrong. There's some players in the past that I don't. I mean, another one was Patrick Bamford, but it shows me again what do I know? I mean, 'cause he's banging them in left, right, and centre. But we had him on loan, and I just thought he was nowhere near. He was too lightweight. I just didn't see. I didn't think he was quick enough. I just thought, where are your goals coming from? But he's showing again. He's shown this year for Leeds that he can do it at this level, which I didn't expect. I think it's when I was younger, there was players like Andy Hughes and that kind of thing who I was probably a bit harsh on. But I think in the current structure, it just seems to be that players need time to settle in. And I think maybe I need to sort of give them that time before I judge.
Yeah, I think it's something that every football fan can relate to, thinking that you're better than the manager, isn't it?
We've got our own football manager installed where we've done better. That is the problem. That's the issue. I've currently got Kings Lynn in the Champions League, so it just goes to show that I think it's one of those ones where I think the key thing is for a lot of these managers is it's a strategy, and it's a long-term strategy, and I think, bless them, a lot of them just do not get any time. They don't get any time, so they need a quick fix. They need that player to come in and do a job. So hence why a lot of them go for just a proper solid defensive midfielder to screen the back four, because they know what they get with them.
So we've discussed what it's like to be a fan, and now it's time to test your knowledge. You're going to have 5 questions about Norwich and 5 questions about football in the 92 in general. How do you think you're going to do about this one? I think you'll be fine with the Norwich ones.
I think I'll be terrible. I think I've got a terrible memory, but I know I'll do my best.
We'll see. So question 1. Norwich City and which other English side contest the Friendship Trophy every time they meet?
Sunderland?
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, that one.
It is. Question 2. Which EFL team play their games at Field Mill?
Field Mill? No idea. Harrogate.
Mansfield. Delia Smith is infamous now for her on-pitch motivation at half-time during a game against which Premier League opponents back in 2005?
I think it was either... Was it Man City?
It was Man City.
Yeah, it was. Wow.
Phil Foden scored his first England goals against Iceland last week and now holds the record of being the youngest player to do what for England?
Is it have an affair in a different country?
Unfortunately not.
Right. I don't know. Score outside the box?
No, he is the youngest player to score more than 1 goal at Wembley for England.
Of course.
It's a very niche one.
It is, yes.
Question 5. Who did Norwich sign goalkeeper Tim Krul from back in 2018?
It was a free transfer, I believe. He was released from Brighton?
He was, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Question 6. A new rule was brought in for EFL clubs recently which allowed the use of what for the rest of the season?
It's 5 subs.
Yes. Question 7. The furthest Norwich have ever got in the FA Cup is the semi-final on 3 occasions, but when was the last time they reached the semi-final?
Oh, because we weren't far off last year. Got to the quarter-final, lost extra time. It's 1989.
No, it was 1992.
Oh, I was going to say that.
Well, you should have said it, Rob.
I should have, yeah.
Which 2 teams, currently bottom of the Championship, sacked their managers in the last couple of weeks?
Derby.
Yep.
And it's got to be, surely, is Sheffield Wednesday still not bottom?
Yep, it was those 2. It's Sheffield Wednesday and Derby. And your final Norwich question. In the 2015 Championship playoff final, Norwich beat Middlesbrough 2-0 at Wembley, but who scored the goals?
Cameron Jerome.
Yep.
And Nathan Redmond.
It was indeed. You've done well on the Norwich ones there. And you've got a final question. Who is the current longest serving manager in the 92?
Wow.
I'll be surprised if you get this one.
There always used to be that one person, didn't there, that would have been the manager for 10 years, but now it's like...
It was Jim Bentley for Morecambe, but then he's
right.
not there now.
So they're in the... it will be one of the... I'd imagine a League 2, League 1 team that's sort of just happy where they are.
It is a League 2 team, I can tell you that.
Yeah, it's a League 2 team.
It's Simon Weaver of Harrogate Town.
Oh, I've already said Harrogate. I mean, that was kind of what I was thinking. It will be a team like that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that are happy in League 2, and even if they got relegated again, he'd still be the manager. Oh well.
So out of a possible 10, you got 6, which I don't think is bad at all.
I mean, to be honest with you, a 6 out of 10, that's my kind of standard for life in general. If I'm getting 6 out of 10 in anything, it's a 2-1, isn't it?
You only got one of the Norwich ones wrong, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, I was barely born then. I mean, that's
exactly.
That's a one.
So let's move on to looking a little bit more at the current season for Norwich then. You're currently in the Championship, as we've mentioned, with obviously an intention to bounce straight back up to the top flight. How is the season going so far?
I think we're hitting our straps now. I think it was a real hangover. I mean, the COVID situation, to play the games like we did, I think what we did realise quite quickly, I know I mentioned the touch on about fans, there seems to be a bit of an opinion that, I mean, our team is quite young or has some young players, and the way that we play with the tempo. And I do honestly believe that the lack of fans had an effect. I know everyone says this, but I think when you're a worse side, for teams to come to Norwich, to have an atmosphere that was always going to be on the side of the players because we were the underdogs, I think that did have an effect. I think this year, because we lost something like 10 games in a row, 12 games in a row, and like some of the stats that we're coming out with were bound to have an effect. And I think, to get off to got a win at Huddersfield, but then I think we lost a couple of games. I mean, there was one game against Derby, which was like they employed the successful part of the lorry and then just got a free kick and Wayne Rooney put it top corner. It was like a very frustrating game, and 9 times out of 10 we win that game. We've started to hit our straps again. I mean, to go 7 unbeaten and win 5 of them, draw 2, 17 points. I think that's a very positive sign, and I think it's just a case of trying to keep that run going. And I think where I am positive is that that's now the 3rd time or 2nd time I can think under Farke where he's had bad runs, difficult times, and we've come through the other side of them.
Yeah,
I think it's quite rare, and I think there's obviously lots of reasons to that. I mean, most managers, no matter what the situation, would have been sacked. There would have been no questions asked about their sacking if we had sacked Daniel Farke after losing 10 games in a row.
yeah.
It's customary. But I think the thing for me is that we've got a proven championship squad, we've got a proven championship manager, and we've got a manager who's also proven that in his first year, where we finished 14th, that we had some bad times where we were flirting with relegation, and he got us through them, and how he got us through them is more important. The main difference this year is our squad, and our how much less I think injuries will affect us. Whereas last year, the sort of Daniel Farke Friday updates prior to a game, everyone was just, oh my God, what's it going to be this week?
Yeah.
Like, who are we not going to have? And because of work done by himself and the sporting director, Stuart Webber, we're in a much, much, much stronger position. I'm positive. I'm very positive. And I'm not normally the year after relegation. I do think that we're in a much stronger position than other teams, financially and squad and on the pitch. So I think, fingers crossed, we can just sort of keep this run going. It's two points a game on average. If we can get 2 points a game on average this year, we'll finish top 2, and I think that's what we need.
Absolutely. So what have you thought about the transfer activity so far? Has there been many new faces join the club?
Yeah, there's been loads, and I think that's one of the most impressive things that I would say about this current structure over the past 3 years. I mean, we've made over £100 million in player sales, and in profit. So I think the way that we've gone about that, I mean, when we came in, when Stuart Webber and Farke came in, it was a case of the house was mortgaged and remortgaged, and we needed to try and do something on a budget. Yeah. So hence the signings like Timo Pukki. I mean, him on a free signing. I mean, I still cannot believe that. I mean, the stories where he was basically being offered by his agent to clubs, and clubs were going, nah, not big enough or not quick enough. Or and we come along, give him a contract, don't even give him the number 9 shirt, and I think he's got about I think he's nearing 50 goal contributions in 80 odd games, which is just
it's a very good
incredible.
Return, isn't it, for a free transfer player?
Absolutely incredible. How much do you even put money wise on that? You just can't. It's £20 million even in the Championship.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, the transfer business that we have done way more often than not has been successful. It may have taken a year or two. So the likes of Mario Vrancic's, the Steepmans, who we bought. I mean, Steepman was supposedly playing left back when we first bought him, and then was coached and moulded into a number 10, which is a very different position because of his height and strength and his ability to press from the front. So I think Mario Vrancic again was too slow on the ball. He needed too much time. He wasn't quick enough. Now he's like a dead ball specialist, and pretty much every time he gets a free kick, it's like a penalty. He just puts a top corner. I think it's one of those things where our transfer business has been about a squad, building a squad. We were in a position when they first came in that we were pretty much auctioning off players. So James Maddison, the sale of James Maddison to Leicester actually saved the club financially.
Yeah.
We were in a bad way, and I think we were tactical about how bad we were, and we auctioned him off to the highest bidder and invested that money very wisely. I think the signings that we've made this summer, what we did is we looked at our squad and we looked at players that we were convinced would leave. That's what it seemed like to me. So I think we were convinced that Emi Buendia would leave. I think we were convinced that the likes of potentially, not Pookie because of his age and the contract, but we were convinced the likes of Godfrey would leave and Lewis would leave. Younger players, academy prospects, who have had half-decent seasons. Interestingly enough, I do find it interesting, though, that the players that we've sold have been the defenders, when defensively, that was our worst asset.
Yeah.
I think there's something to that. I think makes us more of an offensive threat because of the type of defenders they were. I mean, Godfrey was actually, when he went out on loan to lower sides, he was a midfielder. So who, again, Farke had sort of pushed back into a centre-back position because of his ability to carry the ball and his ability to pass out from the back. But he does make mistakes. He makes mistakes that a defender wouldn't make about losing their man because he's not used to men running off them. It's an interesting one, that one, and I'm very intrigued to see how that goes at Everton. I've noticed that they've played him out of position a couple of times at right back, which he did struggle with, but he was willing to do for us. But I think Lewis will be a fantastic signing for Newcastle. I think he's his engine. He's a fantastic left back, and I think he'll be a Premier League player for them for a decade potentially. We signed Jordan Hugill as another striker option, gave him the number 9 shirt. I think that was, and he's not really hit his straps yet. I think it's difficult because he hasn't had a run in the side, and I think he was more signed as a different option, someone stronger, someone in the air, more of an old-fashioned Championship number 9 for teams that are sitting in. I think we've yet to found a formation where he really fits, but I think he will be important, much like Jordan Rhodes was the year that we got promoted. I think Ben Gibson as well. I mean, he so far for me is probably our best signing. I think we would have done with him last year. I think he's a proper lower league, Premier League centre half that we've managed to get on loan with the option to buy. I think a lot of teams would have liked to have got him in. We managed to go out and sign 10 players and then sell a couple and make a massive transfer profit. Even it's a real shame, but Ballymumba, who is a player who was let go very cheaply by Sunderland, he came on and changed the game and won us the game last week, and unfortunately he's just suffered a knee injury, so he's out for the next 10 weeks. But he's another signing who I thought, wow, I mean, look at it, he's basically just come on, he's played for South Shields last year, and now he's playing in the Championship, and his attitude, I mean, he was getting the ball, he was taking on. Our logic, I found it amazing, was they've got Andre Ayew, who's a fantastic player on that side, but he's not good defensively. So we're going to put you on left back, and he won't mark you. So basically, run off of him and just be aggressive. And he did, and he obviously set up the winning goal. So I think, I think our transfer policy has been criticised because we're never going to go out and we're never going to spend 10 million on a player. It's just not going to happen. Even when we're in the Premier League, we're going to go and we're going to sign the likes of, Sorensen, who plays for Denmark, who's played for Denmark under 21s. Players that until we sign them, no one knows anything about them. No one's heard about them. It's like, that's what I think different. A lot of clubs, you kind of know what's happening and who they're after, and it's in the press or it's on local news. Whereas with us, it's like, bang, it's all under wraps. It seems like our strategy going forward is going to be spending more, but on younger prospects. So, we might start to spend £5 million on a player who's under 21, with the idea of them then becoming good enough to be a Premier League player, which I think fits into our strategy as a team, which is to be in the top 26 teams in England, which I think is a brave thing to say. Yeah. You're basically saying be in the Premier League or challenge in the top 6. Yeah. And I think, as much as some fans don't like that, that's a realistic thing to say when you haven't got finance and you haven't got money. So I think, it's a thing that I think is probably the highlight for me. I think Farke's coaching makes it, but I think the job that Webber and the scouting network that we've got to come in to make the massive profit that we've made on players, to be in the position that we can cope with a COVID crisis and make a £2 million profit. Obviously, we won't be next year because if there's no fans, then no team's going to make a profit. But to be in this position where financially we could actually buy before we sold, which meant that we could replace anyone, and now we're in a position where we've actually still got Emi Buendia. I think it's a fantastic place to be in, and sort of credit to them really. I think is how I'd finish that off.
Daniel Farke, then, he's got you promoted before, like you mentioned. Do you think he is the right man to take the club forward?
100%. I mean, Stuart Webber, I was glad what he said. He said, Daniel Farke's here for as long as he wants to be here. And I think that's exactly the attitude. I mean, he had some interest, apparently, from teams back in Germany.
Yeah.
And his history is fantastic. I mean, he was basically a sort of very low-level footballer, striker for Lippstadt. He then basically wanted to go into football finance and be the sporting director or director of football or that kind of line for that club upon retirement. They said to him, unfortunately, we can't pay a manager and someone to do that job. So you're going to have to do your coaching badges and be the manager as well. So he did his coaching badges, did that whilst also organising, paying for buses and that kind of thing. We sort of had a very successful time with them, got them promoted, then got offered the Borussia Dortmund second team job, which is historically a role that Stuart Webber has always hired from. He did the same at Huddersfield. So I think, 100%, his attitude, the fact that I remember a game at Birmingham in his first year where there was a lot of calls, me, myself, personally, some of the signings we've made, like Marley Watkins, and who just hadn't worked out, and some of the football we were playing, it was 0-0 draws because teams would, I think there was times we were about 17th 17th, 15th in the Championship going into the Christmas period, and we were playing Birmingham away. I think if we'd have lost that, we'd have been 1 point outside the relegation zone. And he gave a debut to Jamal Lewis, who no one really knew much about, at left back. And I thought, at the time I was thinking, wow, this guy, his job's, he's obviously got security in his job because he's gone and just gave a debut to a young lad who, I'd not even heard of at the time, other than he played in the under-21s, and he was man of the match. And it was like one of those, and then obviously Jamal Lewis's career since then, he's now a Premier League player. So I think that's a testament to him, and I think there's many other examples of that, where times have been tough, and he sticks to his principles, and he plays young players, and he's not afraid to leave out experienced players, the likes of Dimmerich, who we signed and hasn't worked out. Adam Eder came in again last year, scored a hat-trick in the FA Cup, and ever since then, Dimmerich can't even make squads. So I think he's what for us, for the model that we're trying to achieve and our transfer policy, and to have a manager who doesn't get annoyed. Every transfer window, we could sell our best player, and he's okay with that. A lot of managers are not okay with that. I think to someone could come in and just offer £25 million for Wendy, or £20 million for someone else, and there's his two best players, and he would be okay with it, and would basically just fill that void with another player that he's got a plan for.
So we've mentioned then that obviously Norwich want to get promoted, but if I had to press you for a definitive answer as to where you think they're going to finish, what would you say?
I honestly do believe that we will win the league. I've got absolute confidence. Where I do see that changing is injuries. Like again, Ida's out for 10 weeks, obviously losing Mumba. That now we've already lost Quintia, so that's two left backs down. So we're at a position where we're going to have to play someone out of position at left back again. We haven't had a settled back line for 18 months, and that will have an effect on anyone. You just have to look at the amount of media coverage that Liverpool are getting now for their defensive issues, and the fact that will be used, quite rightly in defence of potentially their performances going forward. I think that's the one concern for me. We did loan out Sam McCallum, which I was again against because of that. He's playing for Coventry, bit part, and he's a left back, and I was a bit confused at the time, and I knew this would happen, where we would lose a couple of people for injury, and then, but Sorensen, he made his debut in England. He's never played left back in his life. He actually said, "I've never played left back," so not even like kids football, and yet here he is making his debut in the Championship away to Bristol at left back. And he played brilliantly. So I think it's one of those ones where, he'll probably be playing today as well at left back, and I do feel a bit sorry for him because he is actually a centre mid and he hasn't actually played there yet.
Yeah.
But I think I'm very confident. I'm very confident that we will at least be top 2.
So what's a typical match day like for you? Is it a full day thing, or is it literally a just go to the match, come home, and then you forget about it for the rest of the day?
No, it's a full day thing. I mean, if it's away, it's a full weekend thing, because so if I go from a home match day, it tends to be, getting into the city relatively, early. It depends on what other things are happening on that day. We might watch the early kickoffs somewhere. There's also various pubs around Norwich. And, people listening have ever been to Norwich, but it's a fantastic city to go to. There's so much stuff to do, and it's definitely worth it for an away game. The ground isn't far at all from the train station as well, so you've got options there to get travelling, so you can have a drink. Prince of Wales Road is known for its nightlife, so that's another place to go if you're an away fan. But I think, for me personally, it's a family thing. I associate it with family, so ever since I've been very young, it's either been me going with my dad. If he couldn't go, because at the time he was in the police, it would be my nan would go and take me. I think as I got older and Norwich got more successful, my mum's a bit of a Glory supporter, if I'm honest. She started to get a bit more interested. She always says that she's been a Norwich fan, but it wasn't until we started winning again that she showed a bit of interest. But then she's even now, I mean, they have 3 season tickets. One that's sort of shared between me and my brother, and we go where we can, and my mum and dad still go in the Joward stand. So I think, it's a family thing. Normally coincided with eating bad food and drinking things, but drinking a bit and that kind of thing. But and I think with away games, another reason why I enjoy the Championship, with me being based up north, is it's just I get to go to so many more games. I mean, Sheffield, that kind of, lots of northern-based teams that I can go and watch, and it tends to be that what happens is my dad or parents will come up on the Friday night to mine, stay at mine, we'll travel together to the game, and then they sort of tend to stay the weekend, so that's sort of nice as well. So it's definitely it's a family thing. It's not just the game. The game's sort of another thing that sort of we tend to, the entire time we're together, it tends to be what we talk about, is what's going to happen in the game and what's going to happen in the next game. So I think it's definitely a family thing. I'm sure it's the same with a lot of other people.
Absolutely. So the final question then is about going to matches at Carrow Road. So for anyone that's listening that is maybe considering going to Carrow Road, obviously once fans are allowed back in the stadiums, is there anything that an away fan should absolutely do when they go to Norwich?
Yeah, I think it obviously depends on what that away fan, their interests are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd argue, and I'm being stereotypical here, but I'd argue most not football fans like to have a drink. So you probably are talking your Prince of Wales roads and that kind of thing. And it is a very good night out. You won't be lost for bars again when they're open. In terms of the other stuff, it's a city with history. I mean, you've got Norwich Castle. There's lots of things around Norwich to do. There's plenty of vibrant shopping areas and that kind of thing. But I think down Wensum, which is not far from the ground at all, there's some great bars and that kind of thing. Yeah. And what's really nice is, again, it's come to an end now, but Norwich started doing a thing which is called a walk to the ground. So Norwich fans meet about, I would say it's a mile, probably less than a mile away from the ground. Everyone meets up with their banners, and they're obviously everyone wearing yellow and green, and everyone just walks to the ground. So you'll have a situation where you'll have thousands as a group singing songs, walking to the ground, and it sort of builds the atmosphere. And I do think there's been a lot of effort by the Norwich City fans themselves to improve the atmosphere. So a lot of bands, and a lot of it's been partially funded by the club, but also supported by the fans and ran by the fans. Yeah. So hopefully there'll probably be some fans listening to this who have been to Norwich before and thought, that wasn't very good. The atmosphere wasn't very good. It has changed. It's much more vibrant, and they've put a concentrated effort into making it, much more of an experience. So it's definitely worth another go if you get the chance.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Rob, for agreeing to come onto the podcast and talk to us, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks very much, James. Cheers.
Thanks again for Rob to talking to us, and of course thank you for listening. If you'd like to help me on my quest to speak to at least one fan from each of the clubs in the 92 and talk all about your club, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at the 92 podcast, or email us the92podcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the 92 podcast wherever it is that you found this episode. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, it really helps us if you left us a rating and a review. Next time I'll be ticking off another club in the 92. See you then.